Welcome back to Unscripted Stories of a Female Founder. And as you can see, we have a name now. Well, I came up with the name because I think that, like on LinkedIn, for example, I script the videos and that didn't feel right to me. That didn't sit right with me. And I feel like I owe more honesty and I owe the route through to people who are building, who are just starting. And I deeply respect people who are ahead of me in the journey. And one thing that I really want to commoditize, and that's what I love about building in public, for example, and an open source movement, we need each other. And the journey is hard as it is. So one thing that I really learned and then the last year is that you can choose to trust no one and, do it yourself and, be really careful. Or you can choose to trust the right people and see the level of ownership that they take. Because I believe in you. I trust you. I know you know it already, but I know you got the power to do this. These words are very powerful when you actually mean them. And what I've learned is that, it's really hard to trust people, especially in the startup journey. And I'm so lucky and grateful that I have the right team that I trust to take ownership of Octopus. I could gladly say that a few years ago it was me basically having had this problem and thinking that there was no way out. I thought that there wasn't a way to build a business out of it, honestly. And then I saw that there were deeper problems in the root cause that I could build a business on top of. And it's no fun to build alone, honestly. The people around you, the people you can learn from, the people who you work with, they are the best part of it. And then eating those success stories together after, being codependent on each other, relying on each other, trusting on each other, and going to those milestones together. I think succeeding alone is not fun. Even if you're able to do it, that's fine. But do you have, people who were in on it with you? That's why I really wanted to start this because you're in on it, even if you're not aware of it. Every reaction, every comment, every impression, that means the world to me. That means that you're being supportive. If you're following me on LinkedIn, if you're like checking in on what we're up to with Octopus, that means that you care. That means that you're one of those tentacles on this ride with us. And to me, I owe a way to show my gratitude to you. And I think gratitude really is what defines me as a person, as a founder, as a leader. And I think that's really the core reason behind me starting this. So I wanted to thank you once and for all for tuning in to the second episode. I promise that I will learn how to keep the beginning short, because as I mentioned, I'm just learning this. I created my first thumbnail yesterday on Canva. Full credits to Canva for this, and also full credits to Riverside for bringing a platform to life that makes it so easier to really edit videos on. And that really gives me the space to mull over as much as I like. And mulling is something that we do at Octopus. It's really been commoditized by our chief people officer, and she's really one of the best people that you can meet. And I look forward to introducing her as well in the podcast. But that said, so thank you so much for letting me mull this over. And thank you so much again for being part of the ride. So as I mentioned, I want to take either, tackle questions, themes that I think might be of help to you and that you could basically get a see-through window into how things have been like for me. And maybe some of my journeys might be of inspiration to you as you make those decisions in your life that you might be, nervous about, afraid of. But fear is the best fuel that you can need. And if you're afraid of it, do it anyway. I always like the adrenaline in my veins, as Imagine Dragons would have said. And it makes you feel alive, to fight for something, to fight for something that you believe in. And what makes it invaluable is that, we're tackling the fourth biggest organizational crisis today, hiring the right people. Because when you hire the right people, when you retain the right people, the economy, like he gets influenced by it positively. And when you look at it, if you're able to influence the economy, then you're able to like help small businesses survive. You're able to help enterprises grow. You're able to help so many people find the right jobs for them. And to me, the problem that we're tackling one by one is again like couldn't have mattered more. So thank you so much. And this podcast will be, or webinar or video series, I don't know how we would call these, but I guess these are podcast series and formats wise. I'm really not an expert in this, so definitely would appreciate any advice that you might have for me, any feedback that you might have for me. And then that's how we do things. We build together, we grow together, and we rise together, and we support each other along the way, those milestones together. One thing that I would love to do, for example, is, if you commented on some milestones that you recently had, I would love to announce them for the community, and I would love to be the one to, cheer up for you in the front lines. I think that would mean a lot to you, a lot to your team, and a lot to the people who feel like commenting might be might be a good thing for them, because that really would help you appreciate yourself more. When you're in the drive, you're overly skeptical to yourself, because you're always looking for the next thing to fix in yourself, the next blind spot, the next point that you can hit on, the next thing that you can learn, the next weakness that you might have. You're looking for, essentially, when you look at it, none of us want to fail, but the way that I really demonstrate failure, and I think this is important because this has taught me so much. I don't think there is such thing as failure, because failure means, to me, in my opinion, that you gave up. But if you never gave up, like for example, look at Nvidia, to give an example, then how can someone say that you actually have failed? You might not be in the right line of business. You might not be doing the right job at the moment, but this does not mean that you have failed unless you give up on yourself. And, you can ask everyone else around you to believe in you, to believe in what you're doing. But intuitively, intrinsically, if you do not believe in yourself, in your abilities, that you have the power, that you have the capability to do what needs to be done, then that is the point that you should start with. So that said, I'm going to take you to a little bit back and tell you how it all started for me, because I'm sure that it's a bit interesting to you to hear these first from someone like me, someone, in an entirely different country, like facing these rejections. So who I was and who I have become and how these influenced my life, I want to tell you. So the one thing that I actually thought growing up, which really, highlights the power of person so deeply, I thought that growing up, we had core essence. Okay. So I thought that core essence was already within us. And I thought our purpose in life was to discover that and then to make the most of that. So I always thought, okay, there's an essence in me, and my job is to get to it as fast as possible so that I don't waste time, so that I don't, work in jobs that I hate, so that I don't do things that I don't like, and essentially find a thing that I'm best at and thrive at it, and basically do what I love and create positive impact. Looking at my childhood, for example, when I was at the age of 10, that was the first time I asked, why do humans exist? So, people around me, my peers, were really happy to play around at the time, play hide and seek, play football, play all sorts of different games. I was like, why do humans exist? Why do we live? What brought us to life? I didn't know the P of philosophy at the time. I did not know that such a thing existed. I did not know that there was such a discipline. I just wanted some answers. So, those questions have made me who I am, because I thought, if I'm able to, I was around these people, like corporate jobs, would see that they are very ahead in life, and they had things that they were trying to, improve on themselves. They were trying to, learn. They were trying to figure out their purpose. So I said, I don't want to invest 40 years in and not know what I want to do in this life. And it might be different for everyone, and it can change over time. Believe me, if you wanted to do, for example, something for 20 years, And now there is suddenly this bulge in you that makes you want to do something different. That is entirely okay. That is natural. So don't, if you have for example, a standing career and you loved it for 20 years, but now you want to do something entirely different, that's absolutely fine. So in my case, mine was about, I want to find what I want to work on as early as possible so that I focus and invest my time on it, because I always lived my life, even before I knew it, on the principle of return on investment. So I call that productivity growing up, because I thought, how can I be productive in whatever it is that I'm doing, whatever, whether if it's learning a new skill, whether if it's learning a new concept, whether if it's creating something. And that's my core motivation. I cannot stop creating. And that's also the end result of this, me wanting this podcast is the end result of that. And, going back to it, I just thought that, okay, I need to answer some key questions about myself to understand what I'm good at, what I can do, for the rest of my life, or, as long that as I could think of at the time. And I thought that if I could find those answers and I could just approach to that point. But it's like limit when you look at it. For example, if the limit is 1 and what you could do, as in limits in mathematics, you could only approach that limit but never get to that limit. And I think that's really what motivates us in life, because if you're, hitting that limit, then that you climb Mount Everest, that doesn't mean anything anymore. Happiness only lasts 10 seconds while you spend your entire life, climbing on top of that mountain, climbing on top of Mount Everest, even if it's possible, because that impossibility, and not impossibility, but impassibility, as mentioned in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, it really is what drives us. Because if something is impossible, then we start looking for ways to make it possible, and therefore achievable, and then we achieve it. So going back to it, I thought those answers could tell me what I wanted to do in life. So, instead of then doing like playing around, and I was really thinking about those things at the time, and I was really drawn to people so deeply. Because I thought about the world differently. I just thought that, if I could find those answers with, and no one was willing to discuss the reason of existence with me at the time. They were like, we're just going to play around and we're going to have fun. And I definitely don't blame them. I was just a different child in that one, as I mentioned, the little scientist of Piaget. It was a really crash for. I think I'm gonna keep bringing this one up, because I really love that theory, and I think that theory has in fact defined me as a child. I wish I had the chance to take it for it. So that said, now I have come to an understanding, like after putting all this effort, and I have an artistic side about me that I don't really talk about. And I think that I owe the success, the earlier mindset and my career to that artist persona in me, to that little girl that I made so many promises to. And I can tackle that in an entirely different episode, but just to get to the point here, I have come to find out that life is not about discovering yourself. I realize that you don't actually discover something that doesn't exist. I think that we have inclinations, and then we choose to do something with those inclinations. I think that, and this is really going to change the way that you look at things. I think that we create ourselves from scratch. I mean, obviously there is the raw potential that you can do anything with it. But if you look at it as discovering it, you actually, without realizing, constrain your own capacity, because you think that, for example, let's say, you're a numerical person. So the basic math, the basic logic and the population would tell you, be an engineer. And when I was a student, engineering was, for example, something that you needed to take pride on to do. So it was really not about those individual differences. People were not really respected for having different abilities. And I think that still goes on in most parts of the society. And I think I really love the diversity of how we can create our careers in different ways based on our skills. And maybe, for example, communications, maybe social media, maybe design, maybe, research, maybe academia, maybe engineering. I think that the careers have changed so much that we are actually getting more and more space in really doing things that we love, and that the careers that enable us to grow within ourselves. So that said, when I look at it, it's really about creating yourself. So I'm going back to my previous self, when I was a little child, and going back to her, what do you want to be? What do you care about? Because what do you want to be is something so straightforward. So for example, a child can say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a singer. That's sort of the usual of how we would have answered those questions. But hey, what do you like to do? Really focusing and capitalizing on those inclinations at an early age. And obviously, I'm not an expert in pedagogy. I'm just sharing my own personal experiences with you. So definitely, these are not expert advices in any way. It's just that applying those principles that I've come to learn when I was a little girl have taught me so much in how to navigate the business world as a woman, when I grew up. And I think that, if you were to find the answers to those core questions, essentially you find the things that make you feel fulfilled. And you've come to a point in life where you develop so much self-awareness about yourself. And that is really the strongest strength point that you can have. It's the strongest point that you can have about yourself, really knowing yourself, understanding your capabilities, and essentially understanding what you're capable of doing with them. So that said, I think it's really important for us to tackle those questions individually and in brutal honesty, because what I've come to realize, I, of course, had so many dreams, and I am someone who believes that once you put a timeline on them, once you, turn them into pocket-sized projects or tasks, they actually become goals. They become, the performance objectives that you have for yourself to say that am I good enough, and the answer can be yes. And what I realized there is really to be honest. Maybe you don't like the job that you're at. Maybe you think that, or maybe there's something in you that says, this feels wrong. For example, like when I was a freelance writer in a company, I tried to create a social work department because I thought that it would be good for their employer branding, but they were not really happy about a freelancer trying to do that. I think once and for all, everything is really defined by time. If there's something that I believe in so deeply, that is the right timing. Nobody can know what the right time is, so there's also that. But the best thing that you can do is to make the most of the time that you were given. And I think that really starts by understanding what is it that you want to create? What is it? What is the legacy that you want to hand over? What is something that you want to be remembered by? What is something that you want to, leave to the next generation? And life is short. So what do you want to do, in those smallest moments that you have with your loved ones? What kind of a life do you see yourself living? And if you're living your best life, I'm so happy for you. If you have, some suggestions, advices on how you got to that point, I'd love to hear that. Please leave those in the comments. And in the meantime, I'm just also trying to find those answers. And I think that now I have gotten to a point where it would be more valuable to co-create that life, co-create with tentacles. Because and I've come to realize this also at an early age. I could write lyrics on my own, having duets, co-writing those lyrics, and then creating those melodies together. And then, feeling happy when you win a talent competition. Or just, and this is something that has real happened, you would just go to, for example, the ballet room, and in those mirrors, you would just look at yourself, and you would basically sing the parts that you own, and the other person or other people would sing the parts that they own. And I think that's what life is about. And I think that's what our careers are about. My life has come to teach me that There is no such thing as one person's success, just like there is not an overnight success story. I think that every best thing is achieved by so many great people creating a massive force behind it. And this is, valid for team sports and companies and startups especially. And I think that we really owe it to each other to be grateful as to the best of our abilities. And going back to that ballet room, it's relying on each other, and it's unconsciously trusting each other to do the right thing, to succeed together. I trust in my team to succeed together, and we trust in each other's leadership because we also believe leadership is shared. I think you never come to a point where you can say, I know everything. And I think that's when really the growth stops. And if you catch yourself doing that, then you just have to find the next growth point. Because one thing that we also don't talk about is, and yet another Piaget theory, but growth is actually non-linear. For example, let's say that, you're this ball, and then you, for example, or let's say you're the seed. So you would, basically have spread out leaves, starting from here. And some of those leaves would see the sun more. So they would, for example, rise higher. And some of those leaves would see the sun less. So essentially, they would, for example, stay shorter. And essentially, you have to accept that nonlinear way of growing. And I'm not just saying this about like companies, but first and foremost yourself, because you are the best investment that you can do. If you're a founder, listen to me. If you're not investing enough in yourself, then your company is going to suffer for it. If you're not spending enough time finding your answers in your company, your co-foundership, your business partnership, the pathway, the trajectory of your company is going to suffer from it. Because life has this interesting way of making you find those answers. If you avoid them, they're just going to come at you in different forms. And I love it about life. I think if you're able to be honest to yourself, and I mean brutal honesty, there is nothing that you cannot achieve, because most things that people are afraid about themselves, the thing that they're afraid most about themselves, when it comes to like confronting those fears, is people are afraid of themselves. People are afraid of saying what they want. People are afraid of feeling what they feel. People are afraid about, handing a rejection letter to a job that they hate. People are afraid because there are different like financial insecurities and those concerns that they might have. One thing that I really realized that is a game changer and has been a game changer for me: be honest to yourself. Be brutally honest to yourself first and foremost. And this is one of the best advices that I think I could, be a help with. And at this point in time, brutal honesty is everything, because if you sugarcoat, for example, truths, if you sugarcoat things that you don't want to see, then they're just going to become your problems anyway. But then you're basically handing out the hurdle that today's you could face to a tomorrow's you, and you don't know what else you have to, you'll. I'm not trying to sound dramatic at all, but this has been the game changer in my life. Brutal honesty. And if it wasn't for my brutal honesty, I would not be here. I would not have the team that I have today. I would not have the co-founder I have today. And I certainly wouldn't have had all the milestones that I feel so honored by. Thanks to you, thanks to your support, and thanks to your belief in me. And I think if there is a thing that I can do for you, that is to acknowledge the same brutal honesty that have defined my career and defined my life. So yes, This theme today, it seems, is brutal honesty. Honestly, I'm really relying on my neurodiversity to see where this journey will take us, and essentially like sharing my story in the way that I feel comfortable and the way that I feel would help you the most. Again, if you have any comments, feedback, suggestions, questions, please let me know below in the comments. I am learning this with you. We're learning this together. With this one, I will have created my second thumbnail image on YouTube, and I never thought again that I would be on YouTube talking about this one day. But I'm doing this because I know that it will help you and many more people, millions of people one day around the world. Founders, especially female founders who are struggling in the system, who are struggling seeing those statistics, and especially immigrant founders, because I feel if we do not own our voice, then no one else will. So I am owning our voice, and I'm acknowledging that you do too. So here's your challenge for this week. Find a thing that makes you nervous, afraid, and that you've been procrastinating on for weeks, months, or even years. And this week, do it. You don't have to share what it is with me, but if you comment that you have or that it was helpful to you, then I'll know that you have. And I hope that it will help you along the way in getting where you want to be. And one thing that I also realized that has really made my, career define me as a person. And this is a quote by Tolstoy. He said, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember the exact quote on this thing that he said. He said that you should measure people at not where they are, but where they set their sights on. That's how I have been measuring myself for years. And that's how I'm able to push myself even harder each day. And I'm telling you, that's how you should measure yourself. Because where you are today is a no measure of how far you can make it. And I'm telling you, as someone, as an immigrant founder, as someone who has been rejected more than 13,000 times, you have the power to do it. So measure yourself by where you have set your sights on. And don't be afraid to be bolder. Don't be afraid to be brave. Don't be afraid to think further away than where you think that you can get yourself to. Because I bet you can get yourself further than that. Thank you so much for listening to the Unscripted Stories of a Female Founder. If you would like or comment again with any feedback, advices, suggestions, or advices that you might have for us or the founder community here, I would really like it, and would also be happy to share it in the next episode. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you so much for being an extra tentacle in today's episode. I hope that you have enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Oh, and lastly, it's 8 a.m. PST, 8 a.m. CST, and lastly, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone. Have a great day.